Yeah.
Doing that much more it's like how it's in an email. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
Me, James. That out.
Can hear everything. I can just watch the video. Yeah.
I want to know where we do it down.
Shit.
And we probably get that.
It's just.
Yeah, you moment 10,000 down on them.
Gone to fireworks and stop that fan.
That's great.
We're gonna call a meeting in Japan.
Yep.
It's at 5:30.
5:30. So I'll call the March 20th City Council meeting. This is not a work session, is it? City Council meeting to order. Call the roll.
Abby Hansen,
Here.
John Hawkins,
Here.
Megan McFarland. Here. Matt McKinney,
Here.
Logan Welch.
Here. Call for motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favour say aye. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. It's we got a DGO engineer doing a presentation on our electric system study. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here tonight. Apologize in advance. Deidre knows this, but been battling a head cold for the past week, just like everybody else is. So got a bottle of water here. We'll get through it. Correct. Tonight, we're going to talk about the electric system study and capital improvements plan we did for your electric system here in Webster City. My name's Andy Koob. I'm from DGR Engineering up in Rock Rapids, Iowa. Our firm was founded by two electrical engineers in 1952. So about 71 years ago, we've grown to over 155 employees, multidiscipline engineering firm. Myself, I'm a project manager in the electrical power department. I'm a jackrabbit, graduated in 2002, and I've been with the firm. It was 19 years on February 16th. So what were our tasks with the system study? First task is the system evaluation and planning study. So I think most of you have a hard copy already of the study that was issued in October 2022. There's also a PDF available too. I think Deidre, everybody else should have that. If you need a copy, we can get it to you. So I can also follow up with the slides from tonight too. But as you know, in today's age with electronics, car charging, everything else, customers' reliability expectations continue to increase. If the electricity isn't on, they want to know why. So part of this electric system study was to identify deficiencies and come up with solutions to prevent that from happening. So what did we look at as part of the electric system study? We looked at your internal system. So that would be your 69 kV transmission system, your 3 substations, your 13.2 kV distribution system, and we looked at your existing loads. We looked at existing and proposed system loading out until 2032. So really we cover a 10-year period. Our goals, well, what do we want to do here? We want to identify deficiencies, recommend improvements to eliminate those deficiencies, and provide cost estimates for fiscal planning. So that's really the base of what we're trying to do here is fix your deficiencies we identify. Okay, your existing system. You have a 69 kV transmission system with a backbone that has 3 switches. It also has 3 substations, and you have 13 circuits on your distribution system. You got the Sweezy substation, Bowman substation, and the Passwater substation, excuse me here. Your distribution system is mostly overhead construction type. And you do feed some rural areas, which is unique. And you also have the 20 megawatt jet turbine at the Sweezy substation. I thought this photo here was really unique. It's got your 3 substations as well with your transmission backbone. So everything you see in red is transmission. Your 3 substations there are shown in green. Here also is your distribution circuit colored by feeder. So all 13 circuits here are shown in different colors. You can see how you have the municipal system. I want to call it the urban system here, closer to town, but you can also see that your system goes way out and feeds some of those rural areas, which is really unique for a system like Webster City. This chart here, or I shouldn't say a chart, this is a map. So this is more of your urban system, and it shows your overhead versus underground. So your red system, is overhead, and your blue is in underground. So you can see there's majority overhead type construction still on the system, even though I know you're working towards converting that to under. Historical and future load. So red here is your summer electrical peak. Blue is your winter electrical peak. And you can see the Webster City is normally a summer peaker, so that's a higher number. And we projected your electrical load out to this 32,257 kilowatt number. Well, how did we come up with that? Based on kind of this choppy load over the past 10 years, right? Really, that number is based off of new loads and also potential areas of development. So next question is, well, where are those? So this is your 10-year load growth areas, and those growth areas are identified in the, I guess I could call it pink, purple, fuchsia, whatever you want to call it there. But as you can see in the location from your 3 substations, most of the growth is going to occur down here in the southwest part of town near the Passwater substation. We've got an industrial area here that we anticipate some load growth. We got the planned new wastewater facility, some more industrial and commercial area down here. So when we look at, if we go back and we look at how that slope happened, why do we expect that growth over the next 10 years to 2032? This map is where those load figures come into play. So that number that we looked at here, that 32,257 kilowatt number of electrical load, that's the value we plan around. So we want to make sure that your system can accommodate that load growth here in the next 10 years. So what do we have for design criteria? Well, we really have 5. The first one is we want to provide N-1 single contingency reliability. Well, what does that mean? What's N-1? N-1, the N stands for normal. So under any kind of emergency situation, let's see, say you have a substation wiped out by a tornado, God forbid. We want to make sure that you can still reliably serve your customers with reliable electricity, not with the lights browning out and getting dim, not having your refrigerator shut off because the voltage is bad, or not having any cables in town melt because they have too much electrical load going on them. So that's the N-1, and that's we do different contingency analysis for that. Criteria number 2, without getting too technical, it's really just what's that level of voltage service. And you can kind of see, here's a graph of how electricity flows from the substation all the way to your house. So we start at the substation back here, and we go on the overhead or underground primary lines, go to the transformer that's outside your house, and then those wires come into your house, into your panel, and are run throughout your house. But what we're focused on in the study, and I don't want you to necessarily focus on these numbers, but we studied your primary electrical distribution system. So those are going to be the wires that are in the ground and the wires that are overhead. And these are the voltage allocation numbers that we give to them. That's kind of our threshold for flagging. So don't pay attention too much to what the numbers actually are, because I'll show you what those deficiencies are here in a little bit. Third criteria is that we don't want to exceed the thermal limitations of the facilities under normal or emergency conditions. What does that mean? We just want to make sure that the wires that are overhead and in the ground and all the equipment in all three of your substations don't melt or burn up because we're trying to put too much electricity through them. Fourth one is that we want your system to be flexible in terms of operational characteristics. If Adam and his crew are chasing an outage, we don't want them to spend 2 to 3 hours trying to get the lights back on for everybody else. We want them to be able to go out to their system, throw a couple switches, everybody else's electricity is back on, while Adam and crew look for where that outage is. Fifth criteria is that we want the system to be easily expandable to accommodate new loads. This is especially important in today's long lead time era. So some electrical equipment like the substation power transformer that you ordered for a new substation a few months ago, that's out almost 2 years. So the last thing that you want to do is, if you have a new business come to town, contacts Adam, says, hey, I need electricity out of my new business. You don't want to say, well, sorry, we'll come back in 3 years and we can serve you. Now, there's a fine line between being easily expandable versus overbuilding, but that's why we look at that 10-year number and plan around that figure. So system analysis, we've got a computer system or some modeling software back in our office where we can actually build a model of your electrical system to kind of churn out some of these parameters and go through those scenarios that we talked about. So we do that both under your existing load conditions and what we anticipate those load conditions will be at the end of the 10-year period. So here is it's a snippet, if you will, of the model of your electrical system from our windmill software. And this really kind of shows the rural components of your system. So here is kind of what I would call the urban area, municipal area. You stretch all the way out here to the Woolstock, the Stoniga, the Pleasant Hill area, really unique for Webster City. So normally I like to show these when we're going through our analysis because the model will give us different colors when there's deficiencies. But unfortunately, because it's so wide, I'm actually going to show you the spreadsheets that is kind of an export from that model. So what I want to show you here is this is a spreadsheet that gets exported from the values that are in our model. The top 3 rows are your substation capacities. And then these are all of your 13 feeders that go through town. Now, if there's 3 things I want you to see here is that when a value shows up in red, that means it's a brownout condition. So these lights turn brown, gets really hard to see, stuff doesn't work. If it's green, that means likely that cable is going to melt, it's overloaded, or that piece of equipment is overloaded. But if it's black, the numbers are good. So this spreadsheet here is your system intact under existing loads. So that means normal conditions today. There's no outages. Everything is black here, so we're in good shape. If we go 10 years down the road and look at your system intact with projected loads out on 2032, you can see we start to have some red here. Red is bad. So that means we're going to have some voltage drop conditions here on Sweezy feeder 4. Now those values out here, they're going to be different thresholds on whether or not they're rural or municipal, but regardless, that red, that's a violation. We go to another scenario. This is one of our N-1 conditions. So let's say there's a problem on the system and at the Sweezy substation, your oldest substation, let's say we lose what we call the main bus. So that's an N-1 condition. Under existing loads here, we have some issues. We have some voltage drops that are over our 3.5 volt threshold. We go to the very next scenario, which is your 2032 loads. You can see that now we have more red. And now we have some green. So the pass water substation becomes overloaded and these voltage conditions get worse. So long story short on that analysis, load growth is exacerbating some of the existing problems you already have on your system. The last one here I wanted to show you was kind of the worst scenario. We did all of them. And that was the loss of a piece of indoor switchgear at your pass water substation under 2032 loads. So you can see here, we have some more red. So we've got some voltage drop issues. And then we have some red text in the green boxes, which means both the cable here at Sweezy Feeder 2 and the transformer at Sweezy Substation, they're both overloaded. So I'm going to hit the highlights here in the system deficiencies. These are included in your report, but I wanted to make sure I hit the big ones. Two major factors here that we look at. The second one, we kind of went through electrical performance, right? With the voltage drop in the red, cable capacity in the green. But the first one is age of equipment, useful life. So electrical equipment at the substation level, such as a power transformer, if you have a power transformer and you're good about testing it and you're good about maintaining it, kind of like your car, it can last for about 40 years. So keep that 40-year number in mind as we go through some of the next slides. When we talk about a deficiency on your 69 kV transmission system, your 69 system that we showed in the red, that's all backbone. So your substations are tapped off of those lines. So if you lose a transmission line that serves the Bauman substation or the pass water substation, everybody that's connected to those substations is going to be out of power. In theory, we think there should be relay breakers installed inside each of those substations. What that means is that at that point, if there's an outage on the transmission line, because there are breakers at the transmission level in that substation will stay online. Your customers won't see an outage, and Adam and crew won't get called out to figure out what's going on. Some deficiencies on your distribution system. So I kind of showed you some of that when we ran through the analysis, that if you lose the power transformer or main bus at the Sweezy substation, you're going to have some voltage deficiencies. And those are going to get worse under future load growth. Under your projected loads, even with the system intact that I showed you, at 2032, you're going to have some voltage deficiencies. If we look at another N-1 contingency of either the loss of the power transformer or the 13 kV switchgear bus at the pass water substation, you're going to see both voltage deficiencies and cable overloads on your feeders. And also the Sweezy substation does not have enough transformer capacity to serve that load. So that was that last spreadsheet that I showed you where all the green and red came up. Another N-1 condition with the loss of some switchgear at your Bauman substation. Didn't have a spreadsheet for that, but we get some voltage deficiencies there too. And we want to put some additional switching points on your system to increase reliability and make that system more flexible operationally for Adam and crew. Back to the age of life issue. So the Sweezy substation has a few pieces of equipment that are nearing or at the end of its useful life. So like my kids tell me when they start pointing out all of my gray hair, father time stops for nobody, right? So even as we're here today, all this equipment is going to continue to age. It's going to continue to age as we go through the next 10-year period. So when we go and we say, well, Andy, this equipment's only 34 years old, this one's only 23 years old. There's a little bit of difference here in that the outdoor breakers, by the time we're scheduling replacement of those, that is going to be at the end of the 10-year period. So they'll be past that 40-year number. This power transformer at the Sweezy substation is unique in that it is actually a rewound unit. So we expect a little bit less life expectancy out of that unit. which is why it's scheduled for replacement in phase 3. We'll get to all those improvements here in a little bit. The Bauman substation, all the major equipment there is 34 years old. You'll see a lot of this is scheduled for replacement in phase 2, and by the time we get there, they're going to hit that 40-year mark. That includes some equipment on the transmission side in the substation, as well as kind of the high dollar item, which is that power transformer. And we also have some batteries out here that are scheduled for replacement, which might even already be done. Yep, they're done. Okay. This is the big one here. The Passwater substation, while not the oldest substation on your system, it's probably the substation that needs the most improvements. And all of the equipment out there is around 45 years old, southeast part of town there. So we've got some additional substation equipment, including the power transformer, and then also some indoor switchgear and a concrete block fence. It's going to be more about what we're going to do with Passwaters here in a little bit. Just a couple miscellaneous deficiencies we identified. We'd like to conduct a coordination study so that we can determine the correct fuse sizes for equipment out on your system. Long story short on that, you can limit outages to people if those fuses are sized correctly. Adam's had that in his budget for a while, so we included that here. There's an existing arc flash study. Arc flash has to do with personal safety. What an arc flash is if you're working on a piece of electrical equipment with a screwdriver and you accidentally touch the energized part, that's a flash. That's the arc flash. What the study does is tell Adam and his crew what kind of personal protective gear they have to wear. So those standards have changed over the past 5 years, and they really need to be updated every 5 years. So that's why it's included here. And then there's an existing SCADA system, which is really a computer system that can monitor the electrical system, starting to show its age. We have that scheduled for replacement later in the CIP. So back to our recommended improvements. Why are we recommending these? Well, we want to eliminate the deficiencies we identified. We want to equip your system to accommodate that load growth for the next 10 years. We want to, most importantly, increase your reliability, but we want to be proactive versus reactive. What that means is if we have a substation transformer fail, we don't want to scramble to have to replace it, especially with today's lead times. We want to be proactive in replacing that equipment before that would happen. So these are the slides you've probably all been waiting for. This is all great. How much is this going to cost us, right? So this is what we have shown for the phase 1 improvements. The phase 1 improvements are scheduled for, in the report, it's 2022 to 2025. Obviously, we're in 2023. These dollar figures here are all in costs. So they include a pretty healthy contingency fund based on kind of the variation in the market at the moment. They are all contractor costs as well. So there's some potential for cost savings here if some of the electrical staff does some of the work. That's generally how we put these estimates in. It's all contractor based, and these costs are actually all the way back from first quarter 2022. So there's been some variation obviously over the year with inflation, but like I mentioned, we have a healthy contingency fund in there that we hope accommodated most of that. So what are we calling for here specifically? Well, we are recommending the construction of a new industrial park substation on the southeast part of town. That will also require new transmission lines to power the transformer at 69 kV. We'll also have to plug it into your existing system, which is the industrial park substation feeders here at $771,500. The big number here is the $5 million for the substation. $1 million of that is the transformer that you already bought. The Bowman substation battery bank replacement, that's done. That was a high level cost there. Decommissioning demo of the Passwater substation. So let me talk a little bit about that. We knew in going through the study that we were eventually going to have a new substation in Webster City. So if you recall, there's a bunch of age of life deficiencies at the pass water substation. So we made the decision to recommend that we build the new substation, and then rather than put any money back into pass water substation, we build the new substation, kind of beef it up enough to accommodate for pass water substation, and then we decommission and demo that pass water substation. Now, I'm not sure what the right word is, probably ironic, but when we came down to present this recommendation, Daniel and Beatty said, well, that's really interesting because the other engineers we're working with on the wastewater treatment side, they want to build some force mains underneath the existing pass water substation. So obviously that can't happen. Pass water substation can't stay there for that to happen. So the projects are going to align well, and that we're going to be able to get that pass water substation out of the way so that those force mains can be constructed. Distribution improvements here. So these are kind of your overhead underground cable type things to improve voltage. We've got some costs over there. And then the miscellaneous studies we talked about. Overall for phase one, we're looking at around 7.2 million. Phase one improvements are shown here in red. So we have some smaller improvements up here, but the big one is in the circle. That's not the exact site where the new substation is going, but we'll construct a new substation down in this area, tied into your existing transmission backbone with looped feeders right here. That's about 0.4 miles of construction. And then we'll also construct these new feeders here to plug that new substation into your existing electric system. And this is just a one-line diagram that shows electrical connectivity. I won't spend too much time on it, but this is the new substation down here. Then the hatched area is removal of the pass water substation. This substation will need to be up and running and serving customers before we would decommission that pass water substation. Phase two, this is going to take care of the improvements and eliminate those deficiencies at the Bauman substation. So we're looking at putting in 2 breakers there to improve your transmission system. Also going to replace the transformer, and those costs are looking total just for the transmission and substation improvements around 5.1 million. Then add in an additional study here for around 5.2 million, 5.3 we'll call it for phase two. That's 2025 to 2028. And the Bauman substation, if you recall, is up here in the northwest corner. So we would do some improvements there at the substation. And then right now it's just one transmission line that comes down here. We would actually build another transmission line with it. So it quote unquote is looped, eliminates that deficiency we identified earlier. This is just a one-line diagram here that's got the green improvements here for phase two shown in green. Phase three, these are 2028 to 2032, so kind of the end of the CIP period. This is where we go back to the Sweezy substation and eliminate those deficiencies there. And at around $2.6 million total for phase three. And the SCADA system is a system-wide improvement to help you there. And that's shown in blue here for phase three improvements. So the summary of the CIP here tonight, looking at the 3 phases for the next 10-year period, total of around 15.1 million between all 3 phases, with phase one being the largest component. So if you're like me, I'm sure you're sitting all around here going 15.1 million. Okay, how do we pay for it? And Blair Metzger in our office, he's been working on kind of an ongoing rate study for you guys that I'm sure you're all aware of. As part of that rate study, we're doing some initial financial planning. So now that we have the costs of what the CIP is going to be, we're plugging that into our financial model. We're coordinating with some of your financial advisors. And then what the main question you probably have is, what's that going to do to our electric rates? And we'll have an answer for you on that. We're working on that now, have a few things we need to work through, but eventually Blair Metzger from our office will be back to present you the results of that. Just some other items I want to hit here. One of the things that we did not include in our CIP, but we strongly support is the conversion of your system from overhead to underground. Even chopping that off just a few blocks a year helps improve reliability. We're strong proponents of having an underground system. The reason we didn't include it in the CIP is because it's just a dollar thing, right? We just can't come in with that high of numbers, but this, as part of the rate study, we did combine our $15 million CIP with some components of Adams' existing CIP. So all of that's getting flushed out in our rate work, flushed out, I should say. One of the other things that's outstanding here is Corn Belt had scheduled to, in 2024, to rebuild approximately 6.35 miles of your existing transmission line. That's the transmission line that goes from the Sweezy substation past Waters all the way south. So right now it cuts through a residential neighborhood. It's a little bit unique in that this transmission line is included in what's called the common transmission system. So even though it is owned by Webster City, it's actually operated and maintained by Corn Belt. So there are some implications there as far as rebuilding that line. One option that we're looking at with city staff is to become a transmission owner within SPP. And what that's going to do, that presents an opportunity to secure some additional revenue on an annual basis well into the future to help offset the impacts to some of those potential rate increases. The other thing it does is it helps you directly recover some of the costs of constructing those transmission facilities. And it's an ongoing revenue stream that's going to help hedge against some of those future transmission costs. We think owning transmission in the future, which you do now, but as part of SPP is a big opportunity for Webster City. Regardless of whether or not that transmission or transition to SPP occurs, we still think the transmission and substation improvements that we recommend in the report should be made to improve overall system reliability. And these are issues that we continue to work with staff. Quick status update on the substation. So you saw a lot of references in the study to the industrial park substation. Well, that's been renamed the Reisner substation. So you'll see the Reisner substation word here from here on out. That site has been selected. Power transformer was bid and the council awarded that a few months ago. Delivery is expected in February of 2025, believe it or not. Preliminary design of that site is ongoing. We anticipate 2024 construction, and we're trying to align that with the construction of the new force mains that we talked about at the Passwater substation when we decommission that beginning in 2025. So our recommended next steps, we'd like you to consider authorizing design services for phase 1. And that's going to be the Reisner substation design, which you've already authorized preliminary design on that. And then the transmission line design, distribution improvements, design of those, and then the 2 studies we talked about as well. So that was a lot, but that's all I have for you tonight. If you have any questions about it.
I think I read in the material that with the move to electric vehicles, but really being unpredictable at this point, that wasn't taken into consideration for future load. Is that accurate?
That's correct. So we did not look at what your system would look like if every house had a charger or 2 in it. We'll see what it looks like here in the future, right? I mean, everybody has kind of their own interpretation of what that crystal ball looks like. But we did not specifically include that in the report. If I did, I think we'd be looking at a lot more than 15 million, but I think we kind of need to play that by ear.
So a lot of times too, that is tied with the distributed generation. A lot of the growth of electric vehicles will also create the growth of, well, I think inherently distributed generation and bidirectional meters and stuff feeding back. But again, that doesn't change the load on the grid itself, the infrastructure itself. And that's really what we're talking, not necessarily power generation.
Correct.
Because we're buying the power, it's distributing that load. And that's correct, yeah.
Yep.
Very good, thank you, I appreciate
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Okay. So item 1 is petition communications and requests. This is the time of the meeting notice. Citizen may address the council on a matter not on the agenda. Except in case of emergency, the city council will not take any action at this meeting, but may ask city staff to research the matter, or have the matter placed on the meeting for a future. On the agenda for a future meeting. Something wrong with my mouth. Hey. Anyone have anything? Okay. Do you want to put up Bob Bandy's? Yeah.
Yeah, we included in your packet for your information, but Bob Van Dies and Van Dies Supply over the last several years has sponsored the 4th of July fireworks show out at the high school. He notified us that the Premier Pyrotechnics, which I believe is out of Missouri, had contacted them or sent them a letter also attached that they don't have the staff available to put on the show this year. And so I spoke briefly with Bob and thanked him for his past sponsorships of the show. He said he was unable to find another vendor that can fit in for the 4th of July this year. So as of right now, we would not have a show like we have in the past few years.
Unless somebody knows somebody that's does it, which apparently we haven't been able to find one. Gotta be really big fireworks there. We don't want the electrical department doing it. Okay. Item 2, minutes, claims and reports and licenses. The following items have been deemed uncontroversial routine actions to be approved by the council in a single motion. If a council member or a member of the audience wishes to have an item removed from this list, will be considered on its normal sequence on the agenda. I have item A is the minutes of March 6th. B is a resolution on payroll for period ending March 11 and paid on March 17. C is a resolution on bills and the fund list. D is the city manager reports for February. E is the police department reports for February. F is the fire department report for February. G is the Hamilton County Solid Waste Commission agenda packet for March 8th. H is the Heart of Iowa Regional Housing Trust Fund agenda packet for March 16.
Move to approve collectively.
Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. General agenda. With a public hearing on the proposition of approving and consenting to the amended and restated Lehigh Webster transmission and Webster terminal transmission and Webster terminal facilities and operating agreement as further amended. I'll open the hearing. Are there any written objections?
Receive no written objections,
Are there any oral objections?
no oral objections.
I'll close the hearing. This one.
I am. So this is, as I briefly mentioned at the last meeting, when we set the public hearing about a month ago. This is pertaining to the agreement the city has with Mid-American Energy as well as with Corn Belt and other owners of the transmission line that ties into our portion of the coal-fired power plant that we own about 2.6% of. Those transmission lines were initially also included into the ownership and as a way to transmit power from that power plant and ultimately to Webster City. And so the affected area, the line is going to be upgraded by Mid-American Energy so that they can facilitate a project that they have on their system. Mid-American will pay the full cost of the improvements, but it's restating the agreements in accordance to the ownership changes that have been made as a result of that. So.
So.
Resolution.
Yep, to the resolution approving and consenting to the amended and restated Lehigh Webster Transmission and Webster Terminals Facilities and Operating Agreement as further amended.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favour say aye. Same sign. Okay. Someone,
Okay.
table out here. B.
So the next public hearing scheduled, in your packet, you notice that the request was to table the public hearing. So the staff has more time to review, some items for that proposal.
So we're going to table it until April 3rd,
But we need
6:05 p.m.
a motion to do that.
Yeah, okay. So we have a motion to,
So moved.
Second.
all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Item C, council memorandum resolution setting time and place for public hearing for the purpose of considering the maximum tax dollars for certain levies from the city of Webster City proposed fiscal year of 2023-24 budget for April 3rd at 6 p.m. Good evening, Daddy.
Good evening. So this is our annual requirement of telling the public of the increase in tax dollars from the previous budget. It's certain levies, that we have 3 levies that we do use that are not part of this max levy, which is the airport, debt service, and eggplant. So when we had the budget workshop, we knew that the state had made a mistake when merging the multi-residential properties with the residential, and we just didn't know how they were going to correct it. And they decided that the auditors had to go back from square one and redo the valuations. So Kim did that for us, and as a result, the 4% increase that we thought we were going to have will now be 2.51. And the dollar amount is $92,019. However, the bad news is that that's for benefits. It's things that we can levy for, exactly what we need. So the pot of money that your general levy and your emergency levy, those are going to be decreased. So the overall decrease is 32,000, which, I mean, it's not a lot, but any decrease, we're already scrambling, trying to make, a balanced budget. So and so in the next meeting, when we hold the hearing for the max levy, we'll set the hearing to certify our budget. And I don't know if anybody had, wanted to come and talk to Daniel or I on had more questions on the budget, feel free to. I am going to send out some updated spreadsheets, as a result of this change. And just, I'm hoping that I made some changes on the improvements, and hopefully it's just easier to read. So I think that's it. Anybody have questions?
Yeah, we went through the budget workshop back in February, and we went through each department in terms of the needs and expenses. And as you're all aware, there are having several legislative proposals, some that have already been adopted. The one that resulted in the change that Doty had to work through on recalculating and provided us until April 30th to complete. But there's a couple other bills, one that could potentially affect our lost funding and other sources of revenue that goes towards our general fund. And so until some of those are passed and adopted, we really don't know what the overall impact going into the future is going to be. We can, if you'd like, we can revisit and have another budget workshop. It will be very tight and constrained before the deadline to pass it. If you want to review any of the additional information or go with what's been presented so far. The other thing, as we've talked about, and start looking at ways to offset or to move some of the expenses around so that we have more flexibility. I know that a couple cities have used their debt service levy to pay for what's referred to as essential corporate purpose needs. That primarily covers public safety. So equipment and such as vehicles or other things that are used in the public safety departments could be offset by a debt service levy to provide more financial resources and cushions that can then be shifted to other general funded departments. You can't use, if I remember correctly, the corporate essential corporate purpose for things such as parks and recreation or libraries. Public safety is pretty much the key portion that is fits within that arena. This is something that we were introduced to by PFM, our financial advisors, that they work with cities on. They believe they mentioned Fort Dodge uses this method to finance some of their larger capital equipment items such as vehicles for police and fire. If it's something that you want to consider, we can explore. But we are nearing the timeframe to put everything in place so that we can adopt this budget by April 30th.
Is that something you want to put on the agenda next time?
If there's an interest in modifying the debt service, it doesn't affect the max levy that Doty went over. It would just be an add-on. We can work towards that. Like I said, it'd be an add-on to what's already presented and ultimately could lead to a higher overall levy. But again, if it's intended to fund some of the equipment items, the big ticket items we have scheduled in the public safety departments.
And it would be a 1 year. Well,
Yeah, right. It wouldn't be year after year. So we would identify those equipment items. What the Fort Dodge and other communities have done is they levy for that 1 year. They generate the revenue from the levy and have a short-term financing so they can purchase, pay those off, and then pay off the loan as part of that whole process. So.
And tonight we're just setting the date for the hearing, the next meeting.
Correct.
But what you're asking, Mayor, is to possibly discuss what that looks like and what that,
Yeah, that's
how much money would get.
It'd be better if it was brought to us.
I'd be down with that to kind of just
Something.
as an option and what that would look like for the next meeting. Sure.
Sounds good.
I move to approve the setting of the
Thanks,
date.
Tony.
Okay.
All those in favour say aye. D. Resolution authorising the mayor to sign and execute a 3-year agreement with Midwest Injection Incorporated of Cascade, Iowa for biosolids removal and land application project for the wastewater treatment facility.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So the item before you is a routine item that we do every 3 years. We enter into a contract with usually Midwest Injections has been the lowest bidder and they were the lowest bidder again. But what they'll do is they'll take our biosolids from the blue tank at the wastewater treatment plant. They draw that down and then they go do the land application that we're required to do with the DNR. So we're just requesting that we enter into this agreement with them again for another 3 years.
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Item E is authorising the mayor to sign and execute a change order number 2 with Peterson Construction for the wastewater treatment facility improvement project.
For the water treatment plant.
Yeah.
So previously you guys approved change order number 1. They're still experiencing supply chain issues with the electrical components. Peterson Construction has been trying to get a solid date from Automatic Systems, but they're having a hard time pinning that down. So we felt it was safe to give them until June 30th to get that installation done and get that equipment here and installed. So we're requesting that the change order reflect completion date of June 30th. 2020.
Move to approve. Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
F is a resolution authorising a city manager to make necessary budget amendments to use $8,509 of the EMC insurance payment to offset the additional tree material chipped by the J. Petticord.
So we are in the final year of our contract with J. Petticord, who grinds all of our log and brush site. As you can see, the last 8 years, we roughly spend on average about a little over 19,000. However, the last 2 years have been a little bit more. This all goes back to the wind damage from the storm of December 15th of 2021. And so we have come to realize that a lot of this material is believed to have been dropped off at the tree site, after J. Petticoat ground up from last year. And so you can see from 2022 to 2023, we had 27,000 we spent last year, and then this year it's 33,000. This year we budgeted, I think, 35,000. We spent 9,000 on stump grinding for the trees that needed to be brought down. So that left us with a little over 25,000 to spend on the tree site. We did receive $54,500 from EMC insurance. And so we're looking to offset that $8,509 of that to pay J. Petticoat his fee that he sent to us. So we see it going down after this year. The last 2 years are obviously pretty high. We have been looking into some alternative options for the tree site. But actually, that's you're looking at 20,000. The last couple of years have been higher. So we'll see what we can do with that moving forward.
Thanks, Brandon. Call for motion.
Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Item G is the discussion on Wilson Brewer Historic Park proposal from Dean Bowden and the upcoming joint work session with Hamilton County Builder Supervisors, March 27th. Yes, just any thoughts on?
So I think last we talked, we were advised to maybe wait on this a little bit because it sounded like there's some, family issues up. But obviously there's some interest to start this conversation up again, at least by Mr. Bowden. I mean, it's a letter, and he's kind of setting out what he's comfortable moving forward with. But I think us and the city council and the county need to understand what we're comfortable with before we can even really address it, right? Because neither of us can act autonomously towards this request. I mean, we both have to be on board to form this board of trustees he's requesting. So I don't know what we want to do until after we meet on the 27th.
We just wonder if there's anything anyone was worried about before we can discuss it before we have the meeting next week.
The last two lines of the last paragraph.
Yeah.
To that end, his pledge, but asking that the city would match at least that amount. I'm all for people donating money to the city. I'm all for beautifying, adding amenities, whatever. But we just talked about raising taxes, options to levy more taxes. The last thing I want to do is be stuck with a bill for half a barn or something. So that worries me a little bit. And I still don't feel very comfortable with what it actually means for operational costs moving forward on some of these things. So with those two things said, I'm open-minded to the meeting coming up with the county. I'm open-minded to his very generous offer. I mean, no disrespect to his offer, but I am concerned about how we're going to fund that.
I have a question about the cost for hiring a manager, or is that something that was talked about? I did miss the last meeting where that would come from.
The trustees were gonna figure that out, is what my understanding was.
Yeah.
The new elected board.
And that would possibly be funded within the endowment.
It was part of that, or it was the county said they're prepared to step in and help a little as well.
Yeah.
These are all things that I guess we have to sort out with the county and us, where we're all prepared to be at.
I agree. Next steps is the meeting we have on the 27th. I don't think we can really do anything.
You just want to make sure that with receiving this, you wanted to move forward with the meeting or not move forward at this point or what?
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate stirring this discussion up today, but yeah, I mean, we're so close to that meeting with the county. This is obviously relevant information that should be talked about, but yeah, I still think we should meet with the county and just get everybody together and figure out how we want to move forward.
Okay. Item 4 is to meet in closed session to discuss the purchase, sale of particular real estate only where premature disclosure could reasonably expected to increase the price governmental body would have to pay for that property as provided by chapter 21.5J of the Code of Iowa. Call for motion to.
Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
So we'll take a 5-minute recess, but finish the meeting. Thanks, everybody. Did you want to get, you need to get anything signed or anything? Yeah.
Yeah, you guys, please try to take a picture. Sure.
All right.
Hop on up. Hey, Zach, you want to take a picture with all of us?
I'll take a picture. You guys go up there. You've got a
You need it too?